The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets overhead, but they were the only witnesses to the moment the world cracked open. I slammed my laptop shut, heart pounding from the email I just sent, resignation effective immediately. When the door to the executive suite clicked shut behind me with a finality that echoed like a gunshot, Juliet's voice sliced through the silence from across the room. "June, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Her words weren't just a question. They were a plea wrapped in thunder, the kind that makes your bones ache with the weight of unspoken histories. It was supposed to be just another late night at the Barcelona branch of Harper & Wells, the American consulting firm that had dragged me across the Atlantic 2 years ago, on a promise of reinvention. Seville's heat had given way to a sudden autumn storm, the kind that turns the narrow streets into rivers of regret, and I'd stayed past midnight to finish the quarterly report. Juliet, my boss, unyielding, brilliant, the woman who could command a boardroom with a single arched eyebrow, had lingered too, her office door cracked open like an invitation I never dared accept. We'd danced around each other for months. Stolen glances over coffee runs, her hand brushing mine during client handshakes, the electric hum of proximity that neither of us named. But tonight, with the resignation burning a hole in my inbox, the storm outside mirroring the one brewing inside me, everything teetered on the edge. I turned slowly, my back to the rain-lashed window, the city lights blurring into a watercolor smear of gold and shadow. Juliet stood there, arms crossed over her chest like armor, her silk blouse clinging slightly from the humidity that seeped through the cracks in the old building. At 42, she was a force, tall with the kind of poised elegance that came from New York boardrooms and Ivy League debates, her dark hair streaked with silver that caught the light like threads of moonlight. She'd come to Spain 5 years ago, fleeing a divorce that the office whispered about in hushed tones. A high-powered husband, a betrayal that left her rebuilding her life brick by untrusting brick. Me? I was 35, fresh off a string of heartbreaks in Chicago, women who loved the idea of me more than the mess of me, and Spain was my escape, or so I told myself. Wide-eyed optimism had curdled into quiet desperation, and Juliet. God, Juliet was the spark I couldn't extinguish. "June," she repeated, softer now, stepping closer. The office smelled of rain and her perfume. Jasmine and something sharper like resolve. "That email. Talk to me." I laughed, a brittle sound that shattered the quiet. "What's left to say? I'm done, Juliet. This place, this life, it's suffocating me." My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated it. Hated how she could unravel me with just her presence. The door we'd both heard lock. Some glitch in the security system. The night guard probably off chasing tapas somewhere. Trapped us here, but it was the truth I'd unleashed that felt like the real cage. She didn't flinch. Instead, she crossed the room in 3 strides, her heels clicking against the tiled floor like a countdown. Suffocating? Or is it me? Her eyes, that piercing hazel that saw through every facade, locked onto mine. Up close, I could see the faint lines etched around them, badges from battles fought in silence. We'd shared late nights like this before, brainstorming sessions that stretched into dawn, her laughter rare but golden when it came, but never with this raw edge, this precipice. I swallowed hard, the air between us thick as the storm clouds outside. "You don't get it. Every day I walk in here pretending I'm fine, pretending that the way you look at me doesn't carve me hollow. But it's all a lie, Juliet. And lies, they lock you in places you can't escape." She reached out then, her fingers grazing my wrist, and the world tilted. It wasn't desire. Not the kind that scorched, but something deeper. A recognition of souls brushing against each other in the dark. The building groaned under the wind's assault, and for a moment we were suspended. 2 women, worlds apart yet tethered by the invisible threads of what-ifs and almosts. Hours ticked by in that limbo. We paced the suite, phones dead from the outage, the landline silent. Juliet brewed coffee from the ancient machine in the corner, the steam rising like ghosts of conversations we should have had. She talked first, haltingly, about her marriage, how it had been a merger, not a union, how the betrayal came not from infidelity but from indifference, a slow erosion that left her adrift in Madrid before Seville called her south. "I thought Spain would fix me," she said, handing me a mug, our fingers lingering. "But it just showed me the cracks." I sipped, the bitterness grounding me. And me? I'm the fool who thought running would heal mine. I told her about Elena, The artist back in Chicago who'd painted me as her muse until I became her shadow. About the family that loved me in theory but flinched at the truth of who I was. Juliet really listened, her head tilted in that way that made me feel seen, not scanned. As the clock crept toward 3 a.m., we settled on the leather couch in the reception area, the storm a relentless symphony outside. She pulled a blanket from the supply closet, practical Juliet, always prepared, and draped it over us, our shoulders touching. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why tonight?" "Because," I said, turning to face her, the dim emergency lights casting her features in soft relief, "being locked in here with you. It's forcing me to admit, I can't keep pretending you're just my boss." Her breath caught, and in that inhale the shift happened. Not an explosion but a quiet unraveling. She leaned in, forehead resting against mine, and murmured, "Then don't pretend. Not with me." We didn't kiss, not yet, not like that. But in the vulnerability of that touch, the walls we'd built from professional distance and personal scars began to crumble. The night stretched on, confessions spilling like the rain. Her fear of vulnerability, my terror of abandonment. By dawn's first gray light, as the power flickered back and the door finally yielded to our frantic pounding, something irrevocable had changed. We stepped into the waking city, arms brushing, hearts heavier but lighter too. But dawn brings clarity, and with it, the first shadows of what was to come. Seville woke with a yawn of church bells and market chatter. The storm's fury reduced to puddles that mirrored the sky's hesitant blue. Juliet and I parted ways at the office door. Her with a lingering glance that promised coffee later. Me with a nod that masked the whirlwind in my chest. "Take the day," she said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying the tremor. "We'll talk. Really talk." I believed her. God, how I wanted to believe her. The apartment I rented in Triana, across the river from the office, was a shoebox of exposed brick and potted geraniums, a far cry from my Windy City high-rise, but it suited the nomadic ache I'd carried since leaving. I collapsed onto the bed, the sheets still rumpled from yesterday's haste, and replayed the night in loops. Her hand on my wrist, the way her laugh had softened when I admitted my fear of flying, not just planes but hopes. For the first time in years I felt anchored not to a place but to a person. Juliet Voss. The woman who'd mentored me through my first client pitch, who'd defended me in meetings where the Spanish execs dismissed my American brashness, who'd become, without warning, the axis my world spun on. She was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table under a chandelier that dripped crystal light. At 6:15 sharp, because Juliet was never late. She rose as I approached, pulling out my chair with a gallant flourish that drew smiles from the waitstaff. "You look rested," she said, though her gaze lingered on the shadows under my eyes. "Liar," I teased, sliding into the seat. The air hummed with the low murmur of locals and tourists, the clink of porcelain a counterpoint to the pulse in my ears. We ordered, tortista a seat for me, her usual ensaimada, and the conversation flowed like the Guadalquivir at flood. Work anecdotes that skirted the edges of personal, shared stories of expat loneliness. But beneath it, the undercurrent pulled stronger. "Tell me about the woman who taught you to love fiercely," she said suddenly, crumbling a napkin between her fingers. Her directness was disarming, a trait that had closed deals and now cracked me open. I hesitated, fork midway to my mouth. There was Sarah in college. She was a poet, all wild curls and words that wrapped around you like smoke. We met at a protest, anti-fracking if you can believe it, and she saw me, really saw the girl hiding behind the signs. I paused, the memory bittersweet. It ended because I was too scared to fight for us when her family came calling. "What about you?" "Before him." Juliet's smile was a fragile thing, like lace over a bruise. There was always him in the narrative, I told myself. But before that, in law school there was Mia. Italian exchange student, with a laugh that could shatter glass. We studied in hidden corners of the library, her notes in looping script that I'd trace with my fingers. It was the first time I let myself feel free. She looked away, toward the window where dusk painted the Alcazar in hues of amber. But freedom scares us, doesn't it? We build cages to feel safe. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. Our knees brushed under the table, accidental at first, then not, and neither pulled away. As the cafe emptied, the conversation deepened. Her guilt over the divorce, how she'd poured herself into work to drown the echoes. My resentment toward a mother who'd prayed for my cure, rather than my happiness. Vulnerability bred intimacy, and by the time we stepped into the cooling evening, the space between us had narrowed to a whisper. We walked the labyrinthine streets of Santa Cruz, the Jewish quarter's whitewashed walls glowing under lantern light. Flamenco drifted from an open taberna, the guitar's cry mirroring the ache in my throat. At the Plaza de Dona Elvira, with its orange trees heavy with fruit, Juliet stopped, turning to me. June, last night. It wasn't just the storm. It was you. Seeing you raw, unfiltered. It reminded me what it's like to want more than survival. I stepped closer, the scent of blossoms mingling with her jasmine. Then let's want it. Together. My hand found hers, tentative, and she laced our fingers, her palm warm and sure. We stood there, two silhouettes against the fountain's murmur. And for a heartbeat, Seville felt like home. But home, I've learned, is where the heart fractures first. The next weeks blurred into a tentative rhythm. Mornings at the office carried a new charge, her approving nod over reports now laced with a private smile. Our coffee breaks stretching into stolen moments in the rooftop garden. Juliet introduced me to her circle. Elena, the fiery gallery owner who'd become her confidant post-divorce. Marco, the expat chef who hosted Sunday asados in his Triana courtyard. I met them as June, my brilliant associate, but the way Juliet's hand rested on my lower back said otherwise. Yet cracks spiderweb beneath the surface. Whispers in the break room. Voss is playing favorites again. An email from HR about professional boundaries. And then the call from Chicago, my sister voice tight, announcing mom's cancer diagnosis. Come home, June. She needs you. The word home twisted like a knife, pulling me toward the life I'd fled. Juliet sensed the shift. One evening as we shared paella on her balcony overlooking the river, her apartment a sleek haven of mid-century modern amid Seville's Baroque chaos, she set down her glass. You're pulling away. Talk to me. I stared at the water, oil-slicked and restless. Family. Illness. The pull back to what I know, even if it hurts. Tears pricked unbidden. What if this us is just another escape? What if I break you like they broke me? She knelt before me, hands on my knees, her face upturned with a fierceness that stole my breath. You won't. Because we're not escaping, we're choosing. And choices, June, they demand courage. In that moment, with the city humming below and her touch grounding me, I chose. I leaned down, our lips meeting in a kiss that was soft as rain. Fierce as the storm that started it all. It tasted of salt and promise, a seal on the unspoken vow between us. But vows in the light of day are tested by fire. Winter crept into Seville like a reluctant guest, the Sirocco winds carrying whispers of snow from the Sierra Nevada that never quite reached the Guadalquivir. Our affair, if that's what it was, unfolded in quiet defiance. Mornings tangled in Juliet's sheets, her breath warm against my neck as sunlight filtered through Persiana slats. Afternoons in the office where we'd exchange coded glances over conference calls, her foot nudging mine under the table like a secret Morse code. It was romance stripped to its tender core. Notes slipped into briefcases, thinking of your laugh at dawn. Walks along the river where we'd feed crumbs to the pigeons and dream aloud about a life beyond deadlines. Juliet opened doors I'd long bolted shut. She dragged me to the Teatro de la Maestranza for a production of Carmen, her hand in mine as the soprano's aria swelled, mirroring the swell in my chest. See, she whispered during intermission, champagne flute in hand. Love isn't possession. It's this wild, untamed but chosen every day. Her words lingered, a balm on old wounds. For the first time I let myself imagine permanence. A shared apartment in the Barrio de Santa Cruz, weekends in the countryside olive groves, a future where boss and employee faded into partners. But shadows lengthen with the solstice. The office buzz grew sharper, colleagues eyeing our synchronized lunch hours, a pointed memo from corporate about interpersonal dynamics. And then the betrayal that gutted me like a filleting knife. It came on a crisp December morning, the kind where frost rims the Alcazar's fountains. I'd arrived early, buoyed by Juliet's text. Meet me in my office before the team huddle. Have news. I assumed promotion, perhaps a joint project, something to legitimize the hours we stole. Instead, as I pushed open her door, I found her at her desk, poring over a contract with Victor Lang, the firm's Madrid liaison. Victor. Slick-suited, silver-tongued, the man who'd been circling Juliet since her divorce like a shark scenting blood. They looked up startled. Victor's smile was all teeth. June. Perfect timing. Juliet was just filling me in on the Seville expansion. I forced a nod, sinking into the guest chair, but my gaze snagged on the document between them. A merger proposal, Harper and Wells absorbing a smaller Spanish firm, with Juliet at the helm of the new division in Madrid. It's a game changer, she said, her tone clipped, professional. More resources, bigger impact. I'll be commuting mostly, but it'll mean stability for the team here. Commuting. Madrid. The words echoed hollowly. We'd talk dreams, not details, vulnerability, not logistics. When did this happen? I asked, voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Last week, Victor interjected, oblivious or uncaring. Juliet's been a rock through the negotiations. Sharp as ever. Last week, while I'd been nursing my mother's bedside via video calls, spilling fears to Juliet over late-night vino, she'd been plotting a path north, away from us, from this fragile thing we'd built. Betrayal isn't always a knife in the back. Sometimes it's a door closing quietly while you're still reaching for the knob. The meeting dragged, details blurring into white noise. When Victor left, Juliet turned to me expectant. Exciting, right? We could make it work. Weekends here, calls in between. I stood, chair scraping like an accusation. Work? Is that what this is now? Another merger to manage. My voice rose, raw and ragged. You didn't tell me. Not a hint. While I was bearing my soul about leaving everything behind, you were packing yours. Her face paled, the silver in her hair stark against the flush creeping up her neck. It's not like that. The offer came out of nowhere, corporate pressure. I thought you'd be proud. Proud. The word tasted like ash. Of being sidelined? Of watching you build a life that doesn't include me? Tears burned hot and unbidden. I paced to the window, the city sprawling indifferent below. This isn't just a job, Juliet. It's us. Or it was. She crossed to me, hands outstretched, but I flinched away. June, please. I was going to tell you tonight, over dinner at that little spot in Italica. Candles, the works. I swear. But swears are wind, scattering like the leaves in the plaza below. Trust isn't a footnote in a contract. I whispered, the fight draining from me. It's the whole damn story. The team huddle that followed was torture. Juliet's poised presentation, my forced smiles, the colleagues none the wiser. By lunch I was gone, feigning a migraine, fleeing to the sanctuary of Triana's markets, where the vendors' calls drowned my sobs amid stalls of saffron and olives. That night, she came to my door, rain-slicked and desperate, pounding until I opened. Let me in, she begged, voice breaking. Let me fix this. I did, because love is a stubborn fool. We talked until the candles guttered. Her explaining the corporate machinations, the fear that vulnerability would cost her the career she'd clawed back. Me admitting my terror that every good thing ended in abandonment. We cried, we held each other. The reconciliation, a fragile bridge over the chasm. But bridges under weight can buckle. The new year dawned with tentative mending. Juliet deferred the Madrid move for 6 months, citing team integration. And we threw ourselves into the expansion, late nights planning, her office becoming our war room and whispered haven. Romance rekindled in stolen touches. Her fingers tracing my spine during conference calls. My head on her shoulder as we watched the Three Kings parade from her balcony. The fireworks painting our faces in bursts of color. Yet the fracture lingered. A hairline that widened with each corporate missive from Madrid. Victor's emails grew frequent, laced with subtext. Juliet, we need your vision here. Soon. And then the call that shattered the illusion. It was mid-February, Carnival's revelry echoing through the streets like mocking laughter. I'd planned a surprise. Tickets to a private flamenco show. A night to reclaim what the betrayal had chipped away. But as I entered her apartment, phone in hand to announce my arrival, I heard her voice from the study. Low, urgent, laced with a laugh I hadn't heard in months. The one reserved for old flames. Victor, it's not that simple. But yes, the merger excites me. More than I thought. A pause, then softer. And you. Always you, pulling me back. My blood iced. I slipped out, the door clicking shut like the lock that started it all. Betrayal's second act. Not a plot twist, but a sequel I should have seen coming. Carnival's masks hid a multitude of sins, but none could conceal the hollow in my chest as I wandered Seville's streets, the air thick with confetti and the tang of fried churros. Drummers pounded rhythms that synced with my fracturing heart, revelers in sequined gowns and feathered headdresses swirling past like fever dreams. I texted Juliet a lie, stuck at the office, rain delay, and found solace in a dimly lit bar off the Alameda, nursing a tinto de verano until the edges blurred. Victor. Of course it was Victor. The pieces clicked with cruel clarity, the late calls she dismissed as work, the way her eyes had distant during our quieter moments, the merger not just a job but a lifeline to a past that pulled harder than our present. I'd been the interlude, the Spanish sabbatical from her real life, the high-stakes world of Madrid power plays and ex-lovers who knew her scars intimately. By midnight, my phone lit with her messages. Where are you? June, please. I silenced it, letting the flamenco's wail from a nearby stage drown the ache. Dawn found me on the riverbank, the Guadalquivir sluggish under a pallid sky, pigeons scavenging like scavengers of forgotten promises. I should have confronted her then, stormed back with accusations sharp as duende, but anger had ebbed into a weary resignation. Love, I'd learned, wasn't a fortress. It was a tide ebbing to reveal the rocks beneath. She found me at noon as I nursed a café con leche in a plaza café, the sun mocking our disarray. Juliet looked wrecked, hair tousled, eyes red-rimmed, her coat clutched like a shield. You heard, she said flatly, sliding into the chair opposite. No preamble, no denial. Just truth stark as the bare branches overhead. Enough to know it's over. My voice was calm, a detachment I'd cultivated from years of goodbyes. The merger, Victor, they're your future. I was just the detour. She flinched, reaching across the table, but I folded my arms. It's not God, June, it's complicated. Victor and I, we have history. Law school before everything went corporate and cold. The divorce unearthed it, made me question if I'd settled. Her words tumbled, pleading. But you woke me up. Made me want more than safe. Safe. I echoed, bitterness rising. That's what I was? The risk you took until it got too real. The cafe patrons glanced our way, but I didn't care. I trusted you, Juliet. After everything, the lock-in, the confessions, the way you held me when Mom's news hit. And now? You're choosing the ghost of what was over what could be. Tears tracked her cheeks, silent and silver. I'm scared. Of failing you, of failing us. Madrid offers control. A way to rebuild without the mess of feelings. She laughed, hollow. But without you, it's just empty rooms. The conflict tore at me. Part of me wanted to bridge the gap, to pull her into my arms and rewrite the script. But betrayal's poison lingers, turning love's warmth to frost. Then go, I said softly. Build your empire. But don't ask me to watch from the wings. She left with a nod, the space between us vast as the Atlantic I'd cross for reinvention. The days that followed were a blur of mechanical routine. Office hours where I'd catch her silhouette in doorways, our interactions clipped to emails and nods. Corporate announced the merger. Juliet's promotion to managing director in Madrid, effective April. Cheers echoed through the halls, but to me it was a dirge. My mother's condition worsened, pulling me stateside for a week that stretched into 2. Chicago's gray slush and hospital fluorescence were a stark contrast to Seville's sun, but they grounded me in the familiar pain. Mom, frail in her bed, gripped my hand with surprising strength. I was wrong, Juno, she whispered, using my childhood nickname. About you, about love. Don't let fear steal your joy like I did. Her words, hard-won from chemo's haze, cracked the last of my resolve. Back in Spain, the office felt haunted. Juliet had already packed her corner office, boxes stacked like tombstones. We collided one evening in the rooftop garden, the city twinkling below like a constellation of regrets. I leave tomorrow, she said, voice steady but eyes pleading. I nodded, throat tight. Congrats. You'll kill it. A pause, heavy as the jasmine-scented air. June, is there any part of you that don't? The word was a wall, but my voice trembled. You chose, Juliet. Now live with it. She stepped closer, the space charged with the ghost of our first touch. I chose wrong. Her confession hung, raw and ragged. Victor was nostalgia, a crutch. But you're the truth I ran from. The climax crested then, emotions colliding like thunderheads. I shoved her hands away, tears spilling. Truth? You lied with every kiss, every promise. I gave you my broken pieces, and you handed them back shattered. My voice rose, echoing off the terracotta pots. How do I trust again when the one person who made me believe betrayed me twice? She crumpled, sinking to the bench, sobs racking her frame. Because I'm human, June. Flawed, terrified. But I love you. Fiercely, stupidly. If you'll let me, I'll fight for us. Resign, stay, whatever it takes. The vulnerability in her eyes mirrored that locked night, stripping us bare once more. I knelt, our foreheads touching, the city's hum fading to our shared breaths. Then fight, I whispered. But no, it's not just words. It's actions every day. In that garden under a canopy of stars we clung to each other. The conflict storm breaking into tentative peace. But peace in love's drama is fleeting. A breath before the next act. Spring unfurled in Seville with defiant beauty. Almond blossoms carpeting the Alcazar gardens in pink confetti. The air alive with the trill of nightingales and the distant strum of guitars. Juliet's fight began quietly, deliberately. No grand gestures, but a series of choices that rebuilt the bridge I'd burned. She turned down the Madrid posting, citing personal commitments. And when Victor called, furious, she hung up with a calm that spoke volumes. You're my commitment, she told me over a picnic in Maria Luisa Park, her fingers weaving through mine as we fed each other jamon-wrapped dates. The rest can wait. Rebuilding trust was a slow waltz, 2 steps forward, 1 back. There were nights when doubt crept in, her phone buzzing with work alerts, my nightmares of locked doors and closing elevators, and we'd talk until the words ran dry, vulnerabilities laid bare like offerings. Therapy entered the equation. Separate sessions at first, then joint, with a counselor in the old quarter who specialized in expat hearts. Betrayal isn't the end, she told us one rainy afternoon, her office overlooking a courtyard fountain. It's the forge that tempers love if you let it. Mom's passing came in May. A quiet surrender after a valiant rally. I flew home for the funeral, Juliet insisting on coming. Her presence a steady anchor amid the eulogies and casseroles. She stood beside me at the graveside, hand in mine, whispering, "You're not alone, June. Not anymore." In the church basement, surrounded by aunts who eyed us curiously, she introduced herself simply. Juliet, June's partner. The word hung unadorned and profound, a claim staked in the heart of my past. Back in Spain, grief wove through our days like the Tagus' tributaries, mournful but nourishing. We scattered Mom's ashes in the Guadalquivir at dawn, Juliet holding me as the current carried her away. To new beginnings, she murmured, and in that release, I felt the last chains of my old life dissolve. The office adapted to our openness. No more coded glances, but a partnership acknowledged in subtle ways. Shared credits on projects, her defending my ideas with the same fire she'd once reserved for boardrooms. Whispers faded, respect took root. Harper and Wells thrived under our tandem vision. The Seville branch becoming a model for inclusive leadership. By summer we'd moved in together. Her apartment, expanded with my bookshelves and a balcony herb garden that perfumed our evenings. Romance deepened into ritual. Tuesday flamenco lessons where we'd laugh over my 2 left feet twirls, her leading with a grace that made my heart stutter. Weekends in the Sierra Morena, hiking trails that wound through cork oaks, picnics of manchego and membrillo under skies vast as forgiveness. But the story's humanism lay not in perfection, but in the ongoing dance. One August evening as cicadas chorused and we swayed on the balcony to a distant festival's music, Juliet pulled me close. I almost lost you, she confessed, her voice a thread in the warm night. Twice. It taught me. Love isn't possession, it's presence. Showing up every storm. I traced the silver at her temples, the lines of laughter we'd earned. And I almost ran, I admitted. But staying? That's the real courage. We kissed then, slow and sure, the river reflecting fireworks from some distant celebration. Bursts of light that echoed the shift we'd claimed. No grand tragedies, no fairy tale bows. Just 2 women scarred and whole, choosing each other in the quiet revolutions of ordinary days. Seville, with its layered histories of conquest and rebirth, mirrored us. A city that remembered its wounds but bloomed anyway. And in that blooming we found not just love but grace, the humanistic heart that turns betrayal's ash to fertile soil. As the stars wheeled overhead, Juliet whispered, Locked in or out, we're free now. And for the first time I believed it.